Good morning, good morning for those of you watching live. We will record these sessions, so usually when I say an intro, I say afternoon or evening as well. Hi, welcome everybody to the Prophecy Data Hero Summit. I'm Malcolm Hawker, the head of data strategy with Prophecy Software. I'm thrilled you have chosen to join us today, and it's my honor to speak about the future of master data management. Let me share my screen. Hopefully everybody is now seeing a big PowerPoint saying future of master data management. I come to my knowledge here, I think relatively honestly. I'm an ex-head of an IT function where I deployed MDM and data governance, and I'm also an ex-Gartner analyst. I'm the co-author of the last 3 MDM Magic Quadrant documents. And while I was at Gartner, I was given the distinct honor of speaking to no fewer than 1,500 data heroes just like you. And I got to figure out what's working, what's not working, where things are going, more importantly. That's what we're going to talk about today. Where is MDM going? What does the future look like? To understand the future, let's take a little look into the past. If you've been around the data space for a while now, you've probably heard something like, well, I thought, Hadoop killed MDM. I thought data lakes or data swamps killed MDM. Every 6 months to a year, there's something else that comes around is going to kill MDM. I've seen this over and over and over again. I don't know why we're so passionate about putting a knife in MDM, but the fact is MDM is still relevant, and we're going to talk about that more today. How do we know it's relevant? Well, because this guy with the pointy finger here told you that it was relevant. I'm kind of joking. But this is something that I wrote in one of the last major publications that I had at Gartner in 2022, where in that publication was titled The State of MDM. And where I talked about how MDM has actually transitioned. And during my 3 years at Gartner, I saw this transition firsthand, where MDM has transitioned from nice to have, we'll get to it, we'll do it when we have to do it, to a must have, where MDM is now the foundational component of any digital transformation initiative. What's different? What happened around 2020, 21, and 22? Well, we all know what happened, right? There was a global pandemic. There were supply chain disruptions. Businesses were forced to do things in completely new and novel and different ways in order to adapt to a changing business environment, to disruption in their supply chains, and on and on. And during that time, in that 3-year span, what we saw is companies running towards MDM instead of running away from it. And this has remained true. These digital transformations are by no means over. MDM has now firmly placed itself in this category of must-have. Companies who want to understand their customers and their supplier relationships need MDM. Oh, excuse me, I'm having some technical difficulties. You'd figure out at this point I'd know how to operate PowerPoint. But there's a little bit more going on here than just this pivot, just this transformation. Really what we're seeing here is honestly something that we've always kind of acknowledged, which is that we have functional specificity within our organizations. We've got different departments, groups, functions, where we have marketing, we have sales, we even may have different departments or divisions. We are aligned functionally within our organizations. And what we've seen, obviously, for the last few years, for the last decades, I would argue, is this pivot back and forth, centralized, decentralized, centralized, decentralized. When in reality, we are highly decentralized. Companies operate as federated units. And we know when those units are given freedom to operate, we're given freedom to have a certain amount of autonomy over their data, over their applications, good things can come from that. However, we also know that in order to reap the benefits of any sort of cross-functional collaboration, right, to reap the benefits of operating as a corporate entity as a whole, you need to break those functional silos. That's what MDM is. MDM breaks these silos. So really, the more freedom we give our business units, the more we embrace autonomy at a functional level, the more we talk about federating data management, the more we may even talk about a data mesh or maybe even data fabrics, whatever it is. We know that giving business units a certain amount of autonomy is a good thing. They like that, and we're better for it. But at the same time, we need to be able to deliver these economies of scale that exist at a cross-functional level. So to be able to do both, to have some degree, not entirely, but some degree of centralized control, but also a certain amount of freedom that we need to operate effectively within these business units, you need MDM to bridge that gap. You need MDM to bring it all together. This is this foundational component that we know is necessary. We figured this out during the pandemic when companies were like, okay, wait a minute. We've been really federated from a supply chain perspective. Now we need a little bit of oversight. We need both. So it's not an either or. And as long as we need to bridge this gap, as long as we need to operate efficiently, cross-functionally, we need MDM. So if you're in the business of MDM, or if you're an MDM practitioner, maybe you're a data governance expert, the future of MDM really is bright because it has to be. This is actually a quote of mine from that document that I wrote at Gartner. The future is bright because it absolutely has to be, because it's needed to bridge these silos that naturally exist within our organizations. However, there is change coming. And we've seen it play out over the last few months with the explosion of generative AI, right? So let's look forward. Yes, MDM is going to be needed kind of conceptually to break silos, but what does it actually mean for the future of MDM as a technology and as a discipline? Let's not forget MDM is a discipline and a technology. The technologies are advancing in such a rapid pace that we really can't ignore this. And technology is really going to push us to a new realm of not only master data management, but also kind of data management writ large. So the future of MDM really is the future of data management. And what does that future look like? Thanks to a lot of the technological advances that are happening, plus the changes to the way that we do business. You put all these things together, and what we have here is really what I'm sharing on the screen now. This transition from highly human-driven to highly machine-driven. We are on this transition now. The horse is out of the barn. We're not going back. We're only going forward. I would argue we are early in this transition from human-driven to machine-driven. Along the way, we'll experience what we're calling augmentation, where we will have technologies augment the way we do MDM. Technologies will augment data stewardship. They will augment data quality, matching, model building, you name it, I could keep going on. But over time, the machines will do more and more and more and more of that. Will we ever get to a point of full automation? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. However, there will be heavy degrees of automation in certain processes. But this march towards automation, towards this future of data management, to the future of master data management, really, folks, to me, comes down to one thing. It comes down to, if we can use the entire internet, this just blows my mind. If we can use the entire internet to train AI, right, to answer certain questions about anything, I'm sure you've all played with ChatGPT, you name it. To answer these questions, we certainly can use our own data. We certainly can use our own data, and maybe data that's even shared with us. Maybe we're going to collaborate with other companies to share data to create broader training sets. But we certainly can use AI to answer difficult questions about how to model data, how to structure data. When is data accurate? When is data not accurate? And really what we're talking about here is the idea of some sort of data management, let's just call it a co-pilot, that is able to answer a lot of these hard questions, right? Using AI, using all the metadata we have, right? Not just a small subset of data, but just imagine all the data that we have in a given data estate. These questions will be answered by and assisted by AI. They'll be fed to humans. Often humans will have some sort of yes/no oversight, but this is really the future. And when we think about this from an architecture perspective, when we think about it from a technology perspective, really what we're talking about here is the data fabric. So 6 months ago, I was a little hesitant on the data fabric because I thought that some of the technology wasn't there yet, but I see it now. I absolutely positively see it now. Thanks to the launch of generative AI and the explosion there, I absolutely positively see this. The data fabric is about a lot more than just an integration layer. If somebody's telling you this is about integration, it is, but not only that. What the data fabric is, in my mind, the data fabric is a data management architecture where data itself informs its classification and use. Sitting at the foundation of the data fabric is most certainly data sources. And then, of course, there's a data catalog. Sitting on top of that will most certainly be MDM. This is not going away. We will need to provide guidance from a business rule perspective, provide guidance from a stewardship perspective. Some of that guidance will be coming from this idea of some sort of a co-pilot sitting on top of this infrastructure. These pieces are all going to work together in this data fabric where we get to a world where the co-pilot is actually helping us not only make better decisions about data management and about MDM, but also about operational uses of data. This is really what's called the activation of metadata. If we have access to all of our data and AI can look at it, we can run some powerful knowledge graphs, we can actually understand when data is correct or when data is incorrect, when data is being widely shared and when it's not being widely shared. These are answers to questions about how do we define data quality? How do we define what's master data and not master data? The answers to those questions are literally buried in the metadata, but today we lack the technology and the scale to be able to analyze these things. In the future, that will go away. The data will be fully activated and we will realize the future of a data fabric enabled infrastructure. Now, you could rightfully ask yourself, well, Malcolm, this sounds great, but I've heard a lot of this kind of stuff before. Right. I heard, going back to that first slide that I've shared, we've been through the, hey, Hadoop is going to change the way you work and it's going to revolutionize everything and on and on. Isn't this just another shiny object? Well, I would argue in the case of Hadoop, and there are others, Hadoop is still looking for a business case. But when I think about how AI is transforming just about every way we live and all of our technologies, AI is being used today by teenagers to do their homework. Right? There is a use case here. This isn't just a shiny object. I'm going to talk a little bit in the future, in the next few minutes here, about this concept of adaptability. Prophecy sees itself as adaptive MDM. This is another part of what it means to be in the future of MDM, adaptability. To be adaptive means to be able to shift based on context. It recognizes the fact that the way that marketing wants to see the world is different than finance sees the world. Today, we struggle with having governance policies to do that. We struggle with having just one set of governance policies. In the future, we need N sets of governance policies to meet the flexibility and scalability that our business partners demand in our future state. The way we're going to do that is through AI, is through data fabrics, is through these advanced technologies that are really going to deliver the speed and scale that our businesses now expect. While I was at Gartner, I was given the honor of writing something called the Critical Capabilities document. It really kind of defined what is and what isn't MDM from a capabilities perspective. Let's look forward to talk about what some of the critical capabilities might be in the future for MDM so that you can start planning for some of these things now. I'll go into a little bit of detail here. We'll share these slides. Excited to get into offline conversations about any of these issues because frankly, guys, each one of these bullets could be an hour-long presentation in and of itself. So we'll be pretty high level talking about these things. But again, I would certainly invite offline conversations, whether that's through LinkedIn or whether that is through prophecy.com, you name it, happy to go into more details here. But putting on my future cap, putting on my future Gartner analyst cap, here's what I see from a critical capabilities perspective. One, in the future, MDM systems will need to be highly adaptive. I already talked about context, right? And the idea that context matters. The way marketing data looks is different than the way finance data looks, and they're both right. And how do we get to a place in the future where we are able to manage both of those sets of rules, but also a set of rules for enterprise-wide uses of data? So if your CEO asks, how many customers do we have? There's still only one answer to that question. The idea of a single source of truth now morphs into multiple sources of truth, because the reality here is that truth is context bound. The truth for marketing is different than the truth for finance. And again, they're both right. Adaptability means that you can serve both of those needs, Or you can even serve the needs of that C-level executive who needs an accurate customer count. That's what adaptability means. We even see a future where adaptability means being able to serve up different data at the time that it is consumed based on the context it's being used. So you could have an MDM hub that is serving a customer record to a marketing use case that is different than a customer record for a finance use case in real time. That's the future that we're going to here, folks. That's what adaptive means, meaning you could have multiple master data models. You could have multiple matching paradigms. You could have multiple sets of governance policies and quality policies based on your business needs. That's what adaptive is. Here's one that gets a little complicated, but the idea of matching data where it persists. Forever and ever, one of the kind of limiting factors of MDM is the fact that you had to go and collect it from everywhere around the organization, and that you had to put it all into one bucket, right? There will continue to be that one place to manage business rules for MDM. That's not going away. But in the future, we're going to match data where it sits. That's what I mean by in situ data matching. We'll match data wherever it resides. So instead of having to collect all this data, we're just going to connect to it and match it where it resides. This will remove one of the historical barriers that has held us back within the MDM space, because the more data you try to run through your match algorithm, the slower it works. You've all experienced this. In the future, though, we'll be able to manage data where it lies. And this will drastically increase the scalability and flexibility of MDM solutions in the future. I can't talk about the future and I can't talk about data fabrics without talking also about data catalogs. Data catalogs are different than MDM. These things, however, are much better together. They need to work together. The catalog is going to inventory everything. MDM is going to manage business rules for your shared data, which is master data. Of course, but these things need to be tightly integrated and sharing business rules back and forth. This is one of the problems that we face today in this space between catalogs and MDM, is that you can set a governance policy in a catalog and it may not necessarily be even known by the MDM. This needs to change, and it is changing. Thankfully, it's slowly changing, where MDM will consume business rules managed and governance policies managed in a data catalog. That integration needs to be seamless in the future. It's an important part of that data fabric-enabled future. External data sharing and blockchain. Yes, I said blockchain. It went away for a while, but I think it's coming back. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But really here, the idea of external data sharing is the idea that if we benefit by sharing data within our four walls within our company, then maybe we can benefit by sharing data with others. Maybe there are economies of scale that exist if I can share data across a complex value chain or a complex supply chain. We've always known this to be true. To manage complex supply chains or maybe a complex product lifecycle or manufacturing process, we need to share data. It's always been true, but it's always been difficult. I see MDM in the future playing an incredibly important role here, where we actually may get to, folks, a future where we are sharing data and sharing governance policies, even sharing management of data across data sharing ecosystems, where you could actually even get to a future of governance enabled as a service, data governance as a service, MDM maybe even as a service, where we're sharing data widely. Sharing from an infrastructure perspective is going to be important, but also incentives will be important, because if I steward a record and everybody benefits from it, what's my incentive to do that? Well, that's where blockchain comes in. And I actually see a future where you could compensate data stewards at company A for stewarding a record that gives benefit to company B. Interesting stuff. Multi-dimensional hierarchies. This one kind of goes without saying. This again is something that I think will really be assisted by graph. We're already starting to see graph in the MDM space. It's already got a solid footprint, but think of these dimensions as 3 dimensions. So today our hierarchies are pretty flat within our MDM solutions. In the future, they need to be multi-dimensional. They need to be more 3-dimensional. We need to understand not just our relationship with our supplier, but our supplier. That's what we saw in the pandemic, is that there were 2nd, 3rd, and 4th degree impacts within these complex supply chains. We need to know about these things sooner. Of course, data will be, MDM will be assisted by robots that are doing data stewardship, right? AI-assisted data stewardship and distributed stewardship. That's what I mean by having a kind of a data sharing ecosystem where people are stewarding data somewhere else that you may be using. This is really something we're already seeing today. I think we're all kind of trying to wrestle with, what does it mean to use OpenAI or ChatGPT or Bard to support data stewardship use cases. We're pushing these capabilities into prophecy literally as we speak. Pretty exciting stuff, but I think there's a lot to be figured out here about, how do we actually do this, and what do our policies, how do our policies reflect things like ethical AI, and how do we make sure the data there is correct? I do see a future, though, where a lot of the hallucinations are eliminated through the creation of company or process specific small language models that are based on more specific data sets to start eliminating some of those hallucinations. But this is going to become something we do more, and honestly, just kind of a standard operating procedure in the future, where we are turning to AI to answer some of the questions about quality or stewardship. So I would be remiss if I forgot to talk about people and process. Right? MDM is a discipline. It is people, process, technology. I've been talking a lot about technologies because honestly, folks, the technologies are really kind of pushing our barriers here. However, people and process need to adapt as well to this new future state. And what do these things start to look like? Well, I really see a future where we get away from the idea of being data-driven. I know I just said it. Right? There are many out there saying, what do you mean data-driven? It's what we're trying to be. Well, I would argue it's never been about the data. I would argue it's been about fact-based decision-making. That's what it's about. But in the world of data and analytics, we've kind of clung to this idea of data-driven and data first. And I think that's kind of allowed us to put data on a pedestal and really kind of often forget about our business partners and the things that matter, which are the business outcomes. So I actually see a pivot in the future. I'm optimistic about this pivot away from data being the center of our universe to customers being the center of our universe. And I think we're seeing this start slowly with the idea of data products. I'm really excited about data products, not because they're anything novel, but because of the possibility and the advantages that will come through the implementation of product management into the data management space, product management into MDM, treating MDM as a product and Gold Master Records as a product that needs to be managed by a professional product manager. When you put product managers into these positions, into data and analytics teams, they'll start talking about customers. They'll actually use those words, and I think those are a good thing. The future of MDM will have product managers starting from a business need and working backwards, right? So instead of starting from the bottom, inventorying all your data, glossing all of your data, doing a lineage of all your data and trying to figure out what data matters, what data doesn't matter. In the future, product managers will interact with data fabrics. They'll interact with active metadata to understand what some of the business needs are, but they'll start from a business need. They'll start from a problem and work backwards from there, work backwards from an outcome. I do see a future where we start to call master data really kind of more of what it is, which is shared data. That's what master data is. It's the data that is shared widely across your infrastructure or across others as well. I see a future where we kind of stop talking about data literacy as being kind of one of the core problems with our inability to deliver value from a data and analytics function, where really what we need to do, it's on us. We need to become more business literate. We absolutely positively need to become more business literate because it's about our customers and it's about business outcomes. It's not about the data. It's about our customers. Lastly, I do see a world where we kind of pivot from governance as a must-have, governance as what CDOs would call it, this defensive approach, to maybe more offensive in a positive way. When we're talking about governance as an enabling function, I think this is really, really important. And some of the words we use in the future, I'm optimistic we'll start to use different words because words actually really do matter, and how you tell our story matters in the MDM space. I actually think, I touched on this before, from a process perspective, I do see data sharing becoming far more widespread. And again, if there's economies of scale that exist because we can share data within a company, they certainly exist across companies. And again, we've largely known this to be true. If you live and breathe in the PIM space, you need to be sharing data about product dimensions and product weights. You need to send that into your downstream consumers and into all of your retail channels. You know this if you live and breathe in the procurement space and in the manufacturing space. You know that you need information about how your materials are actually created and what they look like. You already know these things to be true, but today it's really painful to support these processes. In the future, I do see a world where there are MDMs of MDMs, as it were. And hey, bonus, you're going to help your CDO actually hit his or her sustainability target, because I actually see a future where chief data officers or chief information officers are actually mandated a sustainability target. We got a real problem with data hoarding. I touched on this in an article that I wrote for Forbes recently, but we got a real problem with data hoarding, and it's negatively impacting the environment related to dark data. Now, if we start sharing data, will that eliminate our dark data problem? Of course not, but it's going to help. Instead of a record for Acme Inc. and Acme Inc. and Acme Inc. and Acme Inc. and Acme Inc. being replicated thousands of times, company to company to company, where that record largely looks the same, maybe we could start managing that record as a shared data asset. I think we can, and I think it'll go a long way to at least help. It's not going to solve for, but it'll help some of the issues that we've got with the rampant replication of data that doesn't necessarily even need to be replicated. If I can find it in google.com, is that really a competitive differentiator for me? Maybe we need to be thinking about this through more of a data sharing perspective. And lastly, governance. I do see a lot of changes here coming, right? I see a future where hopefully, I'm an optimist, guys, if you can't already tell by now, but hopefully where we get to a rule where governance is exception driven, not rule driven. Today, we've got a lot of problems because it's rules, right? And if you're like me, like the kid at the blackboard, yes, I know it's a blackboard, but I used blackboards. I'm that old. You don't do so well with rules. And you've probably seen plenty of instances where your business partners are having similar challenges here. But I see a world of a data fabric and MDM enabled future where governance is a function of exceptions, right? Where we are told, hey, there's an exception here automatically by AI, automatically by our MDM hubs. There's an exception that needs to be addressed instead of setting blanket rules that everybody must adhere to that aren't really any fun to manage from a data governance committee perspective. So that's the future. Are you ready for the future of data management? I hope after this presentation, the answer to that question is yes. I will end in one last slide here. We have got so many resources on prophecy.com. Everything I was doing at Gartner, we're sticking out online. I'm writing blogs. If you're not connected with me already on LinkedIn, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm sharing content like this literally every day. We've got white papers, we've got resources. I have a podcast. It's the CDO Matters podcast. We're pushing new editions every 2 weeks. I would be thrilled if you subscribe to the podcast. And lastly, I'm speaking all around the world, which is such an honor to be going to cities, maybe in one you live in. So check out the fine print here at the bottom of the screen. Coming to a city hopefully close to you sometime very, very soon to talk about the future of MDM, data management, data governance, data fabrics. I'm so excited that you are all here today, attending the first inaugural Data Hero Summit. And with that, I will pass it back to our coordinators, and I hope that you stay tuned for the very next session coming right up. Thanks all.